It started with a photograph. March 3, 2019. A sleepy little town tucked into northern Michigan's thick pine forests, where time seems to freeze each winter and thaw slowly each spring. The kind of place where people wave from porches, where the coffee at Marine's Diner always tastes a little burnt, and the snow plows know the names of every kid waiting for the school bus. That morning, snow fell like it had been rehearsed. Slow, poetic flakes drifting across the cobblestone paths leading to St. Luke's Church. The church itself, built in 1893, stood tall and stiff like an old man who refused to modernize. The pews creaked, the stained glass murmured in fractured sunlight, and the bell above still rang with the voice of old steel. They had gathered to say goodbye to Harold Granger. Retired banker. Town sponsor. Husband. Father. Devout Lutheran. And, now, officially deceased, courtesy of a late-night heart attack in his favorite recliner with a half-glass of scotch still sitting beside him. By all accounts, it was a normal funeral. Somber but familiar. Harold had been many things, strict, conservative, blunt, but his death came as no scandal. His heart had simply stopped, like the batteries in the grandfather clock that stood in his office. Mourners shuffled in with solemn nods and fogged glasses. Family in the front. Friends in the back. A smattering of co-workers, poker buddies, and people who owed Harold small debts but came anyway out of guilt or curiosity. Pastor John McKinley stood at the pulpit, thumbing through his notes like he was stalling for a miracle that wouldn't come. Elliot Crane, local photographer and quiet fixture at town events, stood near the side aisle, Canon EOS 5D Mark IV in hand. He didn't love funerals, but they paid. People wanted clean, respectful photos. A record of goodbyes. Proof that everyone mourned appropriately. Elliot had made peace with that. He adjusted his lens and began his slow, unobtrusive circuit of the sanctuary. Snap. Snap. Widow in black. Snap. Pastor mid-blessing. Snap. Close-up of lilies draped over Harold's casket. And then, he saw her. Third pew from the front, right-hand side. Sitting alone. Pale gloves, neat posture, eyes hidden behind dark glasses. She looked like someone torn straight from a 1940s noir film, elegant, severe, and utterly alone. She wept. But not like the widow. Not like the children or friends. Her shoulders moved in tiny tremors, tears falling into a white lace handkerchief she clutched with gloved fingers. She made no sound, just a soft rhythm of breath like the ghost of a sob. Something about her didn't belong. Elliot snapped a photo without thinking. Then another. She didn't notice. Or if she did, she didn't care. After the service, Elliot lingered. He watched as mourners filed out, exchanging muted condolences and casserole promises. But the woman in the third pew remained seated. He approached the pastor quietly. "Hey, John. Who's the woman in the third pew?" Pastor McKinley glanced over, then frowned. "I don't know. Friend of the family?" "I asked them," Elliot said. "The widow's never seen her." The kid said the same. The pastor squinted, as if trying to conjure her identity from memory. "Huh. Maybe she's from Harold's past. Old flame, maybe?" "Maybe," Elliot said. "But there's something else." She was gone. By the time Elliot turned back, the third pew was empty. No footsteps. No farewell. Just a damp mark on the wood where her handkerchief must have sat. That night, Elliot sat at his small studio/apartment above the old hardware store. The hum of a space heater blended with the occasional creak of old pipes and distant wind. He loaded the funeral photos onto his desktop, letting the whir of the hard drive fill the silence. He reviewed the shots mechanically at first. The widow's raw grief. The pastor's pained smile. The casket, polished and perfect in its stillness. And then, the third pew. He zoomed in. She was clearer now, dark curls tucked beneath a vintage hat, cheekbones sharp and ghostly pale. Her mouth was small and pursed, like someone constantly holding back words. Her dress was a deep navy, almost black, cut with an old-fashioned elegance that would have looked more at home in a silent film than a modern church. The lace handkerchief fluttered near her chin. Elliot's eyes narrowed. Something about her felt familiar. Not just in the way all grief feels familiar. No, he knew that face. He pulled up his archives, sifting through past folders, naming conventions, event dates. He stopped at one labeled, Morgan Funeral, September 2018. It was the burial of Linda Morgan, a beloved schoolteacher who'd passed after a long fight with cancer. Elliot had covered that funeral too. He scrolled through, more rapidly now. And there, standing in the back, near the final hymn, was the same woman. Same face. Same dress. Same handkerchief. She looked slightly younger, but only slightly. Her posture identical. Her presence, equally haunting. Elliot swallowed hard. He opened another folder, Wheeler Service, June 2017. This time it took longer. He went frame by frame, zooming in on crowds and corners and reflections in the stained glass. There she was again. Not sitting this time, but standing just outside the church doors, half shadowed by an oak tree. Looking in. Same dress. Same woman. 3 funerals. 3 appearances. No explanation. By Monday morning, the snow had iced over. Elliot's studio smelled like burnt coffee and second thoughts. He hadn't slept. Instead, he printed the photos and tacked them side by side on a corkboard, highlighting the woman's face in each with a red Sharpie. He hadn't done something like this since college, when he'd fancied himself an investigative journalist instead of a small-town photographer who charged $100 for pet portraits. He told himself it was probably nothing. A grief counselor, maybe. Or a religious figure who attended local services. But even that didn't hold up. She wasn't in the obituary guest books. No one remembered speaking to her. She didn't drive into the church parking lot. No record of entry. No record of leaving. Elliot didn't mean to stir things up, but the mystery chewed at him. So, he did what any sensible man might do in a sleepy town full of secrets. He told Maureen. The town's unofficial gossip ambassador raised one thin eyebrow over her coffee pot as Elliot slid the photos across the counter. That, she said, is the same woman. Elliot nodded. Maureen squinted at the dates on each photo. You think she's, what? Some kind of professional mourner? Wouldn't she be paid? Recognized? Maureen shrugged. Maybe she's just lonely. Lonely people don't hide in funeral shadows wearing the same dress for 3 years. Maureen handed the photos back and refilled his mug. Honey, in this town, that dress might be the most exciting mystery we've had since Old Man Brecker's barn burned down. That afternoon, the rumors began to spread. People called her the Mourning Woman. Others whispered she was a banshee. A ghost. Some swore she never aged. Others claimed they'd seen her once, years ago, weeping at a funeral for a child she didn't know. But none of it explained why she cried harder than anyone else. Every time. 2 weeks later, Elliot got a call from Mrs. Langford, caretaker of the town cemetery and record keeper since 1979. I think I found something you might want to see, she said. He arrived at her cottage as the sun dipped low. She wore a thick sweater and smelled of peppermint and dust. She led him to her back room, where dozens of record books lined the walls. Been digging through funeral logs, she said. Looking for unexplained guests. Anonymous sign-ins. Odd patterns. She handed him a tattered journal with careful handwriting. Look at the margins. Elliot opened the book. In the margins of at least 10 different funeral guest lists, spanning over 20 years, there was a small symbol drawn in black ink, a rose. Always in the same spot. No name. No address. Just a tiny rose. "She's been coming here longer than you think," Mrs. Langford said. "I found that same rose mark in a 1994 funeral log. For a man named Clifford Wren. He died in a boating accident." Elliot blinked. "You think she left the mark?" "I don't know. But whoever drew that rose wanted to be remembered without being known." Detective Marla Bishop didn't believe in ghosts. She believed in patterns. And when Elliot Crane's body was found in his apartment above the old hardware store, camera smashed, corkboard torn off the wall, and his files missing, her instincts flared like a struck match. It was staged. Sloppy, but staged. The coroner wrote it off as an accident at first, carbon monoxide poisoning from a faulty space heater, exacerbated by alcohol. But Marla saw through it before she even stepped into the room. No booze. No heater. Just one thing out of place, a photograph wedged beneath Elliot's desk, half burnt at the corner, as if someone had missed it during a cleanup. The photo was familiar. A woman. Third pew. Lace handkerchief. Same black dress. The same damn woman who'd been turning up in funerals across northern Michigan like a bad penny at a coin collector's convention. And Elliot? He'd found her. He hadn't shared it with the department, maybe didn't trust them, maybe didn't think it was big enough. But he'd shared it with someone. Maybe too many someones. Maybe the wrong one. Marla flipped the photo over. Written on the back, in Elliot's tight print. "She's not mourning. She's hunting." That night, Marla sat in her kitchen with an old notebook, a lukewarm beer, and the ghost of her retired mentor whispering in her head. "Some killers hide," he once said over stale donuts and cold case files. "The smart ones mourn." Back then, she'd thought it was just metaphor. Now, it felt like prophecy. Elliot was no paranoid. He had a sharp eye and an obsessive streak. If he said the woman was more than a curious mourner, Marla believed him. She opened her laptop and began with the obvious, Harold Granger. Heart attack. Age 67. Clean record. Former banker. Buried with Lutheran rites and a suspiciously pristine death certificate that didn't list the minor contusions noted in the autopsy photos. But that wasn't what caught her attention. It was the insurance policy. 2 months before his death, Harold had filed an updated beneficiary form. That wasn't unusual. Older men adjusted their wills all the time. What was unusual was the name on the form. Clara Vaughn. Not the wife. Not the kids. His fiancée. Marla blinked, then cross-referenced the name with public records. Nothing. No social security number prior to 2015. No tax records. No driver's license. Not in Michigan. Not in the Midwest. Not anywhere. Clara Vaughn didn't exist. At least, not before Harold Granger decided to hand over $500,000 to her from beyond the grave. By the end of the week, Marla's dining table looked like a serial killer's fever dream: obituaries, printouts, newspaper clippings, catering invoices, florists' receipts, and guest logs spread in overlapping layers like forensic wallpaper. She wasn't hunting a name. She was hunting a face. And there it was again. The woman, always the same, though she changed her name like outfits. Miriam Stokes, noted as a close friend in a 2020 funeral in Traverse City. Emily Royce, signed into a guest log in Alpena. Diana Vale, listed on a sympathy card addressed to the family of a drowned contractor in Grayling. The face never changed. Not in 5 years. Always elegant. Always somber. Sometimes in a veil, sometimes not. But unmistakably her. And in 5 of those funerals, 5, the deceased men had active life insurance policies, with last-minute changes to their beneficiaries. Marla cross-checked the names. 3 of the deaths had suspicious medical contexts: a supposed insulin overdose in an otherwise healthy man with no history of diabetes, a sleep apnea incident in a guy who'd been training for a marathon, and a poisoning marked as accidental because the man had a home bar and a penchant for rare whiskeys. But all of them linked back to Clara Vaughn. Same woman. Different names. Same face. Same pattern. The medical examiner called her the next day. "Bishop, I think you were right about your photographer. What did you find? Cause of death wasn't carbon monoxide. We missed it at first because of how cold the apartment was, but there's trace amounts of ketamine in his blood. Fast acting. Knocked him out before he ever hit the ground. Time of death? Late. Probably midnight, give or take. But here's the kicker." He paused. "There's no sign of forced entry. And the door was locked from the inside." Marla exhaled sharply. Someone had been there. Someone with access. Someone Elliot let in. Or someone he thought he could trust. Her mind flashed back to the corkboard. The missing files. The burned photo. This wasn't a warning. It was cleanup. She decided to visit St. Luke's Church again. The place where it all started. Snow had melted since the funeral, but the old stone chapel still looked as weathered and secretive as ever. Pastor McKinley met her at the door, glasses fogged, cardigan fraying at the elbows. "Detective Bishop," he said. "Is this about Mr. Granger?" "Sort of," she replied. "I need to see your funeral guest logs. And anything you remember about a woman sitting in the 3rd pew that day." He hesitated. "The one who cried so hard?" Marla nodded. "That's her. She was strange. Never introduced herself. She left before I could speak with her. But I do remember her gloves. Pale, old-fashioned. Like something out of a museum." "Did she talk to the family?" "No. In fact," he frowned. "When I asked the widow if she wanted to speak with the woman, she said, and I quote, 'I thought she was one of your people.'" "Did she sign the guest book?" The pastor pulled out a small leather-bound registry. Marla flipped to March 3rd. Nothing stood out at first. Then, halfway down the page, she saw it. A single rose drawn in the margin. Same symbol Elliot had written about. Not a signature. A calling card. Marla dug deeper. She called in favors from old friends at the Department of Insurance, ran background checks on each of the 5 suspicious deaths, and even paid a dark web investigator to scrape for any mentions of Clara Vaughn or aliases connected to sudden inheritances. What she found chilled her to the bone. There were other towns. Other deaths. She wasn't just a local phantom. She was a regional one, surfacing in Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, and Pennsylvania over the past 10 years. Always with a new name, always at funerals, and always with some emotional story that justified her inclusion: a forgotten college lover, a distant cousin, an old flame who'd reconnected just before he passed. And always, there was a financial transaction. Sometimes insurance. Sometimes property. Sometimes nothing more than jewelry left to her in a will hastily rewritten weeks before the death. But there were too many. And they were too perfectly spaced to be coincidence. Marla drew a timeline. The woman, whoever she was, had left behind at least 12 dead men in 7 years. And not a single police department had caught it. Because the kills were clean. Quiet. Professional. She didn't just infiltrate lives. She wove herself into them. She inserted herself into grief like an actress slipping into a well-worn role. And when it was over, she walked away. With tears. With grace. With a check. Then something changed. Marla noticed it in a small obituary from Lansing. A young man, age 34. Heart attack in his sleep. Not unheard of. But uncommon. And there, again, in the background of a photo from the wake, the woman. No dress this time. No handkerchief. She was smiling. It was the first time Marla had seen her not in mourning. Not hiding. Just smiling. Straight at the camera. Like she wanted to be seen. Marla zoomed in. Her hand was resting lightly on the arm of another man, mid-50s, athletic, with an expensive watch and the tan of someone who traveled frequently. She was already moving on. Already lining up her next performance. By the time they found her, she was living under a new name, Lillian Crest, in a hotel outside Grand Rapids. A midtown suites, the kind of nondescript business class place meant for traveling salespeople and quiet affairs. Nothing flashy. Nothing that would raise a single eyebrow. She'd checked in 2 weeks earlier. Paid in cash. Used a fake ID. No online footprint. No digital trail. And yet, she'd left something behind. Room 309. When the front desk manager opened the door for police, he said, she always seemed polite. Bit sad. But very sweet. The type you want to give a discount to. He wasn't smiling when he saw inside. The room was immaculate, but unsettling. Fresh white sheets. A faint scent of lavender. Curtains drawn just so. But on the far wall was a desk, and on that desk, a carefully arranged collage of grief. Wallets. Watches. Lockets. All belonging to men who had died under Clara, Lillian's, watch. Each item labeled with a tiny note, Martin, 2016, Harold, 2019, James, 2021. Some items bore intimate inscriptions, to my dearest, always and forever. Others were more mundane, a scratched-up Zippo lighter, a half-used bottle of cologne, a favorite pen. Each one placed deliberately. Reverently. Like trophies. But this wasn't pride. It felt more like ritual. Like she was remembering them in her own twisted way. In the dresser drawer, officers found a lace handkerchief, the same kind she wept into at every funeral. Next to it, a small velvet box containing 7 gold rings. Detective Marla Bishop arrived less than an hour after the scene was secured. She stood silently as the text dusted for prints. There were none. No DNA. No hair. No skin. Not a smudge on the mirror or faucet. The woman had cleaned the room like a forensic technician. Marla moved to the desk and stared at the trophies. You don't mourn 12 men and leave watches behind, she murmured. Unless you want to remember how it felt to watch them die. Then came the drawer. Locked. But not for long. Inside, tucked beneath a false bottom, was a journal, hardcover, leather-bound, with a single phrase embossed on the front in gold. To move among the grieving, you must become one of them. Marla opened it. It wasn't a diary. It was a manual. The entries were clinical. Surgical. As if written by a grief consultant with a PhD in emotional manipulation. Chapter 1, Silence is Trust. Do not speak first. Let them tell you the story. Let them pull you in. People want to believe you're hurting too. The quiet sufferer earns sympathy faster than the loud one. Chapter 2, Mirror their grief. Watch how they mourn. Reflect it. If they cry, you cry. If they go silent, you go still. Become the grief they want to see. Chapter 5, The Widow's Wardrobe. Always black. Always modest. Repeat key outfits to evoke familiarity. People remember symbols, not faces. Dozens of these. No names. No regrets. Just instructions. A blueprint for mourning convincingly, persuasively, intimately. And every single chapter ended the same way. Leave no trace. Leave them grieving. Marla's hands trembled, not from fear, but fury. This wasn't grief. It was a performance. Then came the final blow. Tucked between the pages was a manila folder labeled in her precise handwriting. Cantor, Joseph. Prospect number 13. Inside, recent photos, email printouts, a calendar with 2 dates circled in red. January 16th, first meeting. January 27th, second meeting. Dinner at Café Lizette. And then, at the very bottom, a document still warm from the printer. Marriage license paperwork. Filed in Kent County, pre-signed by Joseph Cantor. Marla scanned the top line. Applicant A, Joseph Cantor, age 78, widower. Applicant B, Lillian Crest. God, she muttered, she's already halfway through the next one. She flipped to the next page, a life insurance pre-authorization form, unsigned but filled out. Joseph Cantor had no family left. He'd lost his wife of 52 years the previous spring. And 3 months ago, he'd posted a short message on a senior dating forum. I miss talking to someone every day. If anyone out there just wants to share coffee or conversation, I'm around. That was it. That was all it took. Marla moved fast. She found Joseph Cantor at home, alone, in a modest colonial tucked off the edge of a snow-packed cul-de-sac. He greeted her at the door in a cardigan and slippers, squinting through bifocals. "Oh," he said. "Are you Lillian's friend?" She paused. In a way. Inside, his living room was filled with photos of him and his late wife, trips to Niagara Falls, an old dog in a Santa hat, their 40th anniversary party. Joseph poured tea, cheerful, not suspicious. He spoke about Lillian like she was a gift. "She listens," he said. "Not many people listen when you get to be my age. But she does. She remembers things. Things I've forgotten about my wife. She even visited her grave with me last week." Marla's stomach twisted. "How did you meet?" she asked. He blushed slightly. "Online. I didn't think people actually replied to those forums. But she said she'd lost someone too. A fiancé. I suppose we connected over grief." She showed him the insurance form. His face fell. I never signed anything," he stammered. "She said we'd take things slow. That we didn't need paperwork yet." "She lied," Marla said gently. "And I'm afraid she's done this before." He looked down at his cup. "Oh," he said quietly. Then again, softer. "Oh." Marla returned to Midtown Suites the next morning. Room 309 had been sealed for evidence, but she wanted one more look. Something gnawed at her. Something that didn't fit. Why now? Why Grand Rapids? Why leave the journal behind? She reviewed the room in silence. Walked the perimeter. Studied the desk again. Then she saw it. A note. Tucked into the room Bible like a bookmark. On thick, cream stationery. Folded once, no envelope. It wasn't addressed to Joseph. It was addressed to her. Detective Bishop. I wondered when you'd catch up. I'm not your villain. I'm their consequence. Men grieve poorly. They want replacements, not healing. They chase warmth, not wisdom. They give rings to strangers to fill the void, and I simply become what they need. They hand me their hearts. I don't steal them. Don't follow me. I'll only disappear again. But if you insist, look in obituary archives from April 2009. That's where I began. L.C. Marla read the note twice, then a third time. There was no flourish. No gloating. Just calm certainty. It wasn't a threat. It was an invitation. FBI profiler Nathan Kell had seen monsters before. But not like her. He read the file twice before he said a word. Pages and pages of victims, photographs of solemn funerals, grainy surveillance footage, and one grainy shot of her smiling, too perfectly, at a funeral in Lansing. She wore grief like a costume. And wore it well. Marla Bishop handed Kell a summary of what they had: aliases, insurance fraud, a growing death toll. But when she called her a serial killer, he gently corrected her. She's not a killer in the classic sense, he said. She's a relationship predator. Marla blinked. What's the difference? Kell looked up, eyes distant. She doesn't kill for pleasure. Not for compulsion. Not to watch the light leave their eyes. She kills for connection. Short bursts of intimacy. A performance of closeness so convincing, even the victims die believing they were loved. He paused, folding his fingers together. Then she erases herself. Like a ghost who never wanted to haunt, only to be missed. Kell's specialty was reverse mapping, reconstructing lives backwards. He started with her latest known alias, Lillian Crest, and tracked the digital footprints that didn't exist. That was his first clue. Most people leave echoes online. Even ghosts have IP addresses. But she left nothing. No job history. No student loans. No Facebook high school photos. She's not invisible, he told Marla. She's scrubbed. In truth, Clara Vaughn, Emily Royce, Diana Vale, Lillian Crest, none of them existed before 2015. But someone did. In a maximum security facility in Indiana, Kell found a sealed juvenile file from 2007. He couldn't get the name, but the file's notes were telling. A 17-year-old girl, arrested for identity theft and attempted elder abuse. Posed as a home nurse. Stole from a dying man. Diagnosed as emotionally disassociative, highly adaptive, socially persuasive. The arresting officer's comments stuck with him. She didn't ask for a lawyer. She asked for the patient's address so she could send flowers. The girl had vanished after a plea deal. But Kell suspected the name she used after that trial had become her first alias. And that she'd been perfecting her method ever since. Back in Grand Rapids, Kell sat in the evidence room staring at her journal for hours. Not reading. Listening. There's a rhythm to sociopathic empathy, he explained to Marla. It's not that they can't feel. They choose when to feel. Like actors. She doesn't lie with words, she lies with presence. Every tactic in her journal had the precision of a surgeon. Touch early, touch often. The hand on the wrist when they cry. The shared sigh. The tilted head. Each is a breadcrumb. Let them feel lucky. Let them think they're rescuing you. Always be just out of reach. A little damaged. A little mysterious. One entry chilled even him. When they tell you they love you, whisper it back like it costs you something. They'll treasure it more. She wasn't just playing the widow. She was playing the perfect lover, for the dying. She's addicted, Kell finally said. To what? Asked Marla. To grief, he replied. To the intimacy it brings. To the vulnerability. She doesn't get high off the kill, she gets high off the trust. Some killers needed knives. She needed eye contact. With Marla's help, the FBI linked her to 19 confirmed deaths across 7 states. Most of the cases had been closed, labeled natural causes or minor accidents. One man fell asleep in his garage with the car running. Another suffered accidental blood thinning while undergoing treatment. All of them had two things in common: a sudden and intense romantic connection. A woman who showed up, wept convincingly, and vanished before anyone could remember her name. Kell built a timeline. When he plotted it on a map, it looked like a constellation: Michigan, Indiana, Illinois, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Kentucky, Wisconsin. At the center? Detroit. Where her trail seemed to begin and end. Until one hotel receipt changed everything. The Midtown Suites credit card records revealed a single transaction the morning she fled room 309. Air Canada. One-way ticket. Detroit Metro to Montreal. Date, April 2nd. It had been purchased at a nearby kiosk using a prepaid Visa gift card, nearly untraceable. But it was her handwriting on the receipt, logged by a careless front desk clerk as L. Crest. She'd made a mistake. She's leaving the country, Marla said. No, Kell replied. She's reinventing again. Montreal's perfect. Multilingual. Loose identity checks. Lots of wealth. Lots of lonely old men. Marla clenched her jaw. We're running out of time. Kell believed she had rules. She doesn't kill out of spite, he said. She doesn't torture. She doesn't want revenge. Then he paused. But something happened. What do you mean? She left the journal. She left the trophies. She left the note, for you. That's a break in pattern. A deliberate one. Why? Kell leaned back. She wants to be caught. Not imprisoned. Just, understood. These types usually burn out in one of three ways: suicide, capture, or final confession. She's testing which you'll offer. Marla finally opened the obituary archive Clara mentioned in her cryptic note. April 2009. Detroit. She found it. Michael Sorrells, age 36. Car crash. Died instantly. Unmarried. No family. No next of kin. His obituary was simple. A memorial service hosted by co-workers. One floral arrangement noted, from Clara. I'll never stop loving you. A photo from the service showed a young woman in black, eyes red, standing near the back. Her. Younger. More fragile. More real. Kell reviewed it and said only one thing. She did love him. And when he died, something broke. She didn't learn how to mourn. She studied it. Mastered it. And then weaponized it. Interpol flagged her passport the next morning. She'd already arrived in Montreal. Marla stared at the customs photo. Her hair was lighter. Her face slightly fuller. But the smile? Still perfect. Nathan Kell turned to her. You ready to bring her in? Marla exhaled. No. He raised an eyebrow. No? I'm ready, she said, to make her choose. The last confirmed sighting came on a gray morning in northern Maine. A border town. A bus stop. February snow curling like cigarette smoke in the wind. A security camera mounted above the ticket window captured 24 seconds of footage. Timestamp, 6:12 a.m. A woman with dyed red hair, dark sunglasses, and a trench coat wheeled an elderly man, wrapped in a blanket, breathing through a portable oxygen tank, onto the platform. She smiled down at him. He smiled back. To the untrained eye, it looked like a honeymoon. Love in the after years. Two people cherishing borrowed time. But to the agents watching the tape hours later, it was something else. Her. Even without the signature dress. Even without the veil. They knew. Clara Vaughn. Or Lillian Crest. Or Miriam Stokes. Whatever name she wore now, it didn't matter. She had slipped the net. Again. Interpol was pulled in within hours. Port alerts issued. Customs flagged. Descriptions circulated through every healthcare system in the tri-state area. The FBI's behavioral unit called it an active but non-aggressive fugitive with surgical methodology. Which was profiler speak for. She's too smart to keep killing the same way. And too careful to be caught unless she wants to be. But no fingerprints turned up. No facial matches from the bus depot security feed. No trace of the man she wheeled in. No credit card trail. No hospital records. No obituaries. She had learned to erase. To vanish like mist. But still, the letters came. They started small. An anonymous donation to a grief counseling center in Toledo. No return address. Just an envelope stuffed with $3,000 in used bills, and a typed note that read, "Help someone who doesn't know how to let go." Then came another. A check sent to a retirement home in Michigan, with a floral card signed. For those who kept the forgotten company. Then dozens. Letters arrived at widows' groups, hospitals, support forums. Some with money. Some with handwritten condolences. Some with nothing but grief. One envelope, sent to a bereavement nonprofit in Chicago, contained only a single sentence. "He died loved." Isn't that enough? No fingerprints. No DNA. Just that same, deliberate spacing. That same calm grace. Marla Bishop received one, too. To Marla. It arrived on her desk 6 months after the main sighting. Plain envelope. No return address. Main postmark. Inside, a black and white photograph. A man's wrinkled hand resting in a woman's. The edges faded. No faces. Just fingers. Soft. Intertwined. On the back, in careful handwriting. It wasn't murder. It was mercy. He asked me not to let him die alone. I didn't. Marla stared at the photo for a long time. Then filed it under cold cases, closed/unknown. Because what else could she do? Some say she died in Montreal, buried under yet another false identity, next to a man who thought he'd found love again at the edge of life. Others say she only kills in winter, when grief looks natural, and funerals blend into snow. A more romantic theory claims she's taken a vow of silence. That she walks through palliative care wards as a volunteer. No ID. No past. Just a clipboard, soft shoes, and a warm hand. A hospice nurse under yet another name. Helping people die. Helping them feel seen. Helping them believe, if only for a little while, that someone is waiting for them on the other side. Nathan Kell eventually retired. But before he did, he wrote a final note on her case. It reads, "Profile summary, unresolved. Suspect displays extraordinary social mimicry, emotional intelligence, and pattern avoidance. Primary motive, emotional validation via constructed intimacy. Modus operandi, embedded romantic relationship with terminal or grieving individuals, culminating in death that appears natural, accidental, or medically justified. Not clinically psychopathic. Displays ethical elasticity in pursuit of control, not chaos. Possible trauma origin, April 2009, Detroit. Unconfirmed. Final assessment. She wasn't hunting victims. She was hunting moments. In time, local legends gave her a name. The Snow Widow. Some say she leaves a white rose at the foot of every hospice bed she visits. Others claim she lights a candle at every funeral she crashes, then vanishes before the final hymn. A nurse in Bangor once told a reporter she remembered a red-haired lady who sat with a dying man for hours, reading to him from a photo album she claimed was hers. He smiled the whole time, the nurse said. When he died, he was holding her hand. I thought she was his daughter. She wasn't. They never saw her again. If you're reading this, and you've ever known someone who seemed too perfect, too available, too comforting, too quietly present in your most broken moment, ask yourself, did you ever see them again? Did anyone else? Because the Snow Widow doesn't want your money. She wants your grief. She wants your final page. And once she has it, she'll leave you smiling.